On the President's order, we fashioned a daring scheme to have the Hornet launch a force of bombers and strike at Tokyo from the sea.
16 Army B-25 bombers were loaded aboard the aircraft carrier Hornet. No plane so heavy had ever before flown off a carrier, and no one knew for certain if the idea would work. Admiral Halsey was put in charge of the mission, and he selected the American aviator most likely to pull it off, Jimmy Doolittle. Doolittle was a living legend. All of America had been thrilled by his remarkable string of victories in the most exciting air races of the 1920s and 30s. Doolittle was generally considered America's finest flyer. Like Halsey, Doolittle was a great and inspiring leader, loved by his men. In April 1942, less than 6 months after Pearl Harbor, Halsey's task force steamed toward Japan. Doolittle and his fellow flyers knew there was no guarantee they'd ever get home. Even if they survived flying over Tokyo without enough fuel to return to the Hornet, where could they safely land?
All the volunteers for this secret and hazardous job had been specially trained by Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. While under destroyer escort, the 80 Tokyo Raiders held a deck ceremony with Japanese medals. Doolittle fastened one of these to a 500-pound bomb. The medals were going to be returned with interest. After avoiding 2 enemy patrol vessels, the task force realized they were sighted by a Japanese picket boat. The Hornet's escort promptly sank. Since secrecy had been compromised and fearing an alarm all over Japan, Doolittle, forced into the decision, ordered the planes to be launched. This was 800 instead of 450 miles from Tokyo, and 10 hours earlier than planned. Only 467 feet of clear deck faced Doolittle's lead ship. The rest barely had room in which to rev up, and the last plane hung precariously out over the stern of the Hornet. After the wind-up by the flight officer, Doolittle made his run down the plunging deck. With 100 feet to spare, he led the parade. Tension eased a little once the colonel was in the air. When the decks of the flagship were cleared, Admiral Halsey signaled, "To Colonel Doolittle and his gallant command, good luck and God bless you." The bombers were virtually unopposed as they flew on the deck. They swept in over the coast on their way to Tokyo. Elements separated and some climbed to 1,500 feet for the bombing. At 12:15, the attack was opened by Doolittle, who dove in before he unloaded his incendiaries upon the Japanese capital. One after another, they checked off their targets. Tank factory, shipyard, docks, railroad yards, steel plant, gunpowder factory.
And at precisely the moment Doolittle's planes were supposed to arrive over Tokyo, Halsey and the others heard Japanese radio begin broadcasting the incredulous news that enemy planes were attacking the imperial capital.
Well, I thought it was an extremely good thing. We hadn't won anything. The Japanese were and our people in the United States were getting discouraged. We were losing. And that was a big morale builder.
After the bombing was over, Doolittle's planes turned north toward China, hoping they had enough fuel to get past the Japanese-held Chinese coast.
They had completely impregnated the coast.
General Doolittle tells what happened next.
What happened was the airplane flying our landing beacon, which we badly needed to home on, and other fuel for us and so forth, unfortunately crashed. All aboard were killed. And so when we began to plaintively call, turn on the beacon, there was no beacon.
So people went their separate ways?
We just went to where we got as close to as we could to where we thought we wanted to go. One plane, against orders, went to Vladivostok. And they were kept until the war was almost over. and then were permitted to escape. And the humorous thing about this was that the Secretary of the Treasury, I believe it was Morgenthau, was it not?
Mm-hmm.
He called me in once a month, very regularly, and just gave me a terrible going over. He had just received another bill from the Russians for the food and lodging of the 5 people that they were taking care of for us.
How many boys did not return from that mission? How many died on the mission?
There were 2 people drowned when we landed. 4 were executed by the Japanese. 1 jumped and was killed when he jumped. His parachute was available. We don't know what happened. So there were 7.
The Japanese nation was shocked when it heard about the raid. Yamamoto said, "One has the embarrassing feeling of having been caught napping just when one was feeling confident." But this small American victory did not deter Japan. Yamamoto felt they might still win the war in the Pacific, and he and his staff devised a plan to destroy what remained of the American Navy, especially its carriers.